What's going on, fellow patriots? I really didn't think we would have to have the George Floyd conversation again, but I guess I should have realized that when America is filled with a whole bunch of snowflake liberals who just can't seem to get their way. Now, recently got into a debate with somebody over the George Floyd thing. Didn't get very far before they got very salty and blocked me, because I called them out for something that they said that was extremely incorrect, and that was them saying that, it's never, a bad time to let somebody know that George Floyd was murdered and it was homicide and that Chauvin should be locked up. And come on now. We know he wasn't murdered. It was excited delirium. That's essentially what it was. He had over 4 times the legal limit worth of drugs, which you can't even really say legal limit because all of the drugs that he were taking, a combination of them, were illegal, so you can't even really say legal, but that's semantics. But they tried to say that all the autopsies listed as homicide, and that actually isn't correct. That is very incorrect. Multiple autopsies from several different corners have it listed as a drug overdose, because that is exactly what it is. If you ask me, Floyd got what he deserved. You play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. Don't fight the cops when you're getting arrested. And I did watch the full 18-minute video from the body cam footage of Floyd trying to get arrested. Dude asked to lay on the ground. He didn't want to stay in a cop car. He pushed himself out the other side, and he's like, dude, I want to lay on the ground. Chauvin said, okay, man. And at the time, it was policy to lay a knee on the neck, and I've partially disagree with that. I don't think that it is, exactly the thing to do, because it can lead to deaths. But at the same time, when you have someone who is resisting arrest, you have to have points that keep them from just getting up and running away, and the knee on the neck does do that, but I'm sure there are better ways. And I'm not a cop. I'm not in law enforcement. So, I don't know as well as cops do as to what really is a good policy and what isn't. But honestly, why are we still having this George Floyd conversation almost a year later? I mean, a judge is trying to sentence Chauvin for third-degree murder, and really, we've been down this road. Jury didn't convict them, didn't convict the 4 cops, and they shouldn't be convicted, in my opinion, because the evidence doesn't add up to homicide. It just doesn't. I've watched multiple videos from former law enforcement officers, take it step by step, walk us through the body cam footage, and again, doesn't add up to homicide. And I've also done extensive research on the autopsies, on Floyd himself, and all of this other stuff, and it's not homicide, and it really isn't. And then we're still gonna have this Breonna Taylor conversation, like, oh my god, why? Again, wasn't the cops' fault when Breonna Taylor died. And yes, I do love law enforcement. I have much respect for the good cops out there, and don't get me wrong, there are plenty of bad ones out there, but if it wasn't for Breonna Taylor's boyfriend, in my humble opinion, she wouldn't be dead. And she was not sleeping at the time that the cops showed up. And while they did have a no-knock warrant, they did in fact knock and announce themselves as police, as several neighbors, and I believe even the boyfriend, have testified to. So tell me, again, why are we still having this conversation? Everything should have been wrapped up nicely with a little bow as to the cops aren't in the wrong. I mean, again, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. Why should you expect a different outcome when you're doing the exact same thing that is going to put you in that situation to get you shot and possibly killed? Don't deal drugs. Don't do drugs, kids. It's that simple. I mean, it really is. If you don't want something bad to happen, well, more times than not, if you don't do something that would lead up to that, nothing bad's gonna happen. And that's exactly what happened to both George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. Breonna Taylor had rented a car that had a dead body in it. She was seen in the car. She had dealt drugs. She's admitted to it. I mean, all of this other stuff. I've had many arguments about Breonna Taylor with family members, and it just comes to a point of, I get that there's only a certain amount that police can do legally, but at the same time, when you incriminate yourself for that crime, like posting pictures on Facebook of illegal drugs and guns, doesn't paint a very good picture. Now, no, posting pictures on Facebook of you with guns isn't really illegal, but when you throw in illegal drugs with that, it then becomes a crime. You are implicating yourself, you're implicating others. I mean, really, it's all common sense. That's all what it is. It always is common sense, but people lack it. People fail to see the facts, and they let their emotions dictate over their logic, and that's where everything falls through 99% of the time, in my opinion. But I just want to know, why are we really having this conversation again, almost a year later, on both Breonna Taylor and George Floyd? This is just getting absolutely ridiculous. I'm sick and tired of hearing about it, because you know what? When you're a 9-time convicted felon, like George Floyd was, and you hold a gun to a pregnant lady's stomach, I'm sorry, but I have no sympathy for you. Even if the cops did murder him, I'm sorry, but there's not a lot of sympathy for me to give you. And I know that probably sounds harsh and very cold-hearted, but that's just the truth. How can you expect me to go erect a statue of you and name a freaking bill after you when you're a 9-time convicted felon and held a gun to a pregnant woman's stomach? I mean, tell me, how am I supposed to feel very sympathetic on top of you dying of a drug overdose and not by cops? I mean, you don't paint a very pretty picture for me to buy. And even with Breonna Taylor, what a lot of people fail to realize is that she was fired as an EMT about 4 years ago now, would have been 3 years last year, for the whole rental car with the body in it, and also several other things. But I mean, all it takes is a little bit of research from non-biased sources, and don't get your stuff from CNN, please. It's fake news. There's a reason why it's called Clinton News Network. I mean, but it's as simple as doing your research and seeing if the facts add up. If the facts don't add up, don't buy what the news is telling you. And even if the facts don't add up, it doesn't necessarily mean that the cops aren't in the wrong or that they are in the wrong. I mean, it could go both ways. It could mean that the cops are in the wrong, and it could mean that they are, they're not. So it's really up to us to determine what's true and what's not. But at the same time, how can we do that? They waited forever to release the body cam footage of George Floyd, and had they released it sooner, it would have proven all along what a lot of us had said, that it was, it wasn't the cops' fault, and honestly still believe it was a false flag event. I've seen quite a few images, not sure if they're doctored or not, that Chauvin is not the same man in several instances, so it kind of makes you wonder. And this is the whole George Floyd thing is what really picked up the Black Lives Matter movement, I think, for the past year or two. I mean, don't get me wrong, it does go back further than that. I mean, Black Lives Matter is a trend, and you can prove that by going to Google and looking at it. It spikes every 4 years, and every 4 years is an election cycle. So if that really doesn't tell you all about BLM, I don't know what does, besides the fact that, I don't know, there's just a whole lot I could spiel about Black Lives Matter, and I'm going to try and save that. I do want you to watch all of my videos, and ones in the future. But I'll just leave it at this. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, not what the media tells you. I don't think cops were in the wrong in either instance. Now, a lot of people hate me when I say that, especially about Breonna Taylor, but that's just the fact of the matter. Do your research, see if it adds up. If it doesn't, don't buy what they're telling you. And as always, common sense rules. I mean, it does. Common sense is bound by no party, so make sure you use it. This is your host, President Arwal, Freedom Speaks.